Good evening to all of you. Am I audible? Am I visible? Both. Can you just give me a thumbs up for that? If I'm audible, I'm visible, no issues? Perfecto. So we'll wait for 2 minutes and then we'll begin. It's good to see you all in a different setting for sure. So we'll wait for 2 minutes and then we'll begin. Good evening to all of you. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Yeah, very warm welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. So you've met me in different capacities. Today you're going to meet me for the webinar. So either world history or ancient medieval, art and culture, modern India. Now something totally different. And some interesting topics for you also. So as I said, I'll wait for maximum 1 more minute and then we can talk about that. Priyanka, same here. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Good evening, good evening. Same here, Naresh. It's been a very long time with some of you, so it feels good to be here. Yes, Anjali, I would be. Evening batch, ancient, medieval. Okay, so today's agenda is totally different. I've taught you very, very different things. But because GS Paper 1 comes under my purview, I'm here with you with 5 topics. And we've taken one topic, very interesting one, coming from Modera, and the other 4 from GS Paper 2. But I've kept it a mix and match of world history, international relations, political science, and we'll talk about the topics we'll discuss. But today's session, as you remember, is on a Thursday. So Tuesday sessions are mostly weekly current affairs and Thursday sessions are mains-based current affairs. And when we talk about mains-based current affairs, you need to understand one thing, which is what is the agenda here? The agenda is not to know the topic in factual sense, it is to know it in the conceptual understanding. Because in the mains examination, you will never get a conceptual, they will never give you a factual question. They will give you a question in which you would have to think about it. And that is why I'm here with you for 5 topics which make you think about certain things. And these are issues which we take it on face value. For example, the political crisis in the UK itself, but it has a much bigger backstory in that regard. So, before we begin, a very important announcement for you, which is that we are starting our PTS from this Sunday itself, November 6th, 2022. 36 texts are there total, 19 sectional, 9 full course. And this one, the first one, which is on 6th itself, is a full course test. I hope that you're taking the full course test in that regard. Very important for your preparation to evaluate yourself as you go on. 2-3 very basic features, Hindi, English both, offline, online both. If you are in any of these cities, Delhi, Hyderabad, Bangalore, Chennai, Kolkata, Pune, Lucknow or Jaipur, you can go and give the examination in that center itself. And we'll also have a discussion live on next Tuesday on 8th November. But on 6th November itself, we will have our teachers there discussing the paper with you, taking your doubts. So it's going to be an interesting case. Any other information, you go to the BEP app. The first 2 states, which is the November 6th and the 13th November, both are free of cost. You just have to register to give them. Thereafter, you can subscribe to the PTS itself. It's totally your call. So basically, remember, giving tests is a very important part of your preparation, and you need to make sure that you're evaluating yourself once you've completed the course once. So if this is clear, what is the agenda for today? So we'll be discussing 5 topics. In the next 2 hours, we'll be discussing 5 topics. And it's an interesting mix of topics. Meaning, first we'll discuss the RTIs, the concept of the RTI, and a very disturbing trend which has emerged recently. Then something which gives us joy nowadays, and though it shouldn't, but we find a lot of solace in it, which is the political crisis in UK itself. And we'll talk about why did it happen, how is it linked to the larger story of Europe and the Russia-Ukraine crisis, and we'll also talk about what are the challenges for Sunak now. Thereafter, something very disturbing which happened in Kerala, and that has led to a new type of debate within different states and the center over anti-superstition. Then something which pertains to all of us in that sense, which is Google, which is that the Competition Commission has been scrutinizing Google for quite a long time now, and we'll try to discuss what is the recent penalty and how does it define Google in that regard. And the last topic is going to be art and culture, Modera, because a small topic, but because this was in the news, it becomes important for GS paper 1. So GS paper 1, GS paper 2, geography, history, and the polity IR section, social issues. We are taking 5 topics in that sense. Now, can we begin, everyone? Come on. Can we begin? Perfect. So there is a standard way I operate, which is I'm going to give you the context, I'm going to give you the basic summary, and once we understand the topic conceptually, we will look at the PPT. This is always how we go forward. So when I'm going to come to each of these topics, I'm going to give you the basic understanding, and then we'll look at the nitty-gritty of the topic itself. So the first topic is 3 lakh and counting. RTI, please pile up at information commissions across India. Now, when we talk about our transparency regime, which is the concept of good governance, accountability, transparency, India has a very important distinction, which is the RTI Act itself. So the right to information is something which was always a medal of honor, which the government of India had. And we were very transparent in the way we were ready to give information from any body which was governmental, substantially funded by the government. Even an NGO substantially funded by the government would have to give you information under RTI. And I'll give you a very simple example of what RTI could mean to you. You are a student of Delhi University or JNU. Let's take University of Delhi. It's a central university, gets a lot of funds from the center itself. Now, you have a discrepancy in certain entrance examination. For example, you wanted to know what was the cutoff of the entrance examination. That was not told to you. Now, under RTI, what you could do is that you could apply a plea to the Chief Information Officer of University of Delhi and ask them what was the cutoff and what was my marks. Under RTI, they were obligated to give you within 30 days an answer, and if not 30 days, they would then reply to you that we need further 15 days. So basically, within 45 days, you would get an answer about your plea under RTI, right to information. Now, if you don't like that answer, the answer was very vague, they didn't tell you the exact answer, you could appeal against the officer's information and go to the State Information Commissioner, or what is called the FAA, we'll discuss, and thereafter the Central Information Commissioner. There are 4 levels here which we'll discuss, but the basic point is right to information for the examination purpose is very important because of the transparency and governance aspect. But for you and me, it is technically a very important part of our life. Our education, our career matters on these type of information. Now, what happens is, if you are appealing against something and if it is not being heard, this creates a stockpile. And this is the dangerous thing which we need to discuss today, which is that in all the different state information commissions, plus the Central Information Commission, there are total 3 lakh cases of appeal or complaint which are pending as of right now. 3 lakh appeals. 3 lakh people asked certain type of information. They were not satisfied by it. So they appealed against it, or they wanted further information, or they wanted to complain against not getting the information. And this in turn creates, remember, this in turn creates a major problematic aspect within the RTI regime, because if there is a vertical backlog which is being created, it means that it is diluting the RTI regime itself. It is diluting transparency and good governance in India. So this topic at the core of the issue is that RTI is the backbone of accountability and governance in India. And when we are talking about backlogging within the 4 levels which we'll discuss, it means that there is a major problem within the structure itself. And 3 lakh cases, it is believed that if today West Bengal, the State Information Commissioner, if he starts to take all the appeals, it would take him 24 years to actually clear the backlog itself. So there are 2 basic issues behind this, 2 basic issues, and I'll discuss them with you here only, and then we'll go to the PPT. The first issue is that the most of the state information commissions and the Central Information Commission are undermanned. There are a lot of posts which are empty. Second, that even if they are not empty, there is a new tendency which has developed within the system itself, that it technically doesn't matter. Because if you don't, remember, if you don't give up a reply, you are liable to penalty. But what we see is 95% of cases in which penalty should have been there on the authority which needed to give that information, that penalty was not applied itself. So there are 2 core issues here. First, we need to make sure that the RTI appeals and complaints are in a way as soon as possible resolved. On the other hand, the other issue is that the penalty is not being applied means that nobody really cares. So RTI, I'll repeat myself very simply. RTI, very simply, is right to information. I gave you a very simple example. If you are going to a government agency, you have the right to get basic information, not confidential, basic information which pertains to your electricity bill, anything. And under RTI, there has to be within each and every body which is substantially funded, is state and central government established, or is a constitutional body, they need to have a central information officer, and that person will give you the information. There is 30 days plus 15 days regime, but that technically has now been fully diluted. So do you understand the basic premise of where we are working with, what we are working with? Makes sense? You have to give me a thumbs up. We have to be more interactive. Come on. The basic premise is how there is a dilution of everything. Perfect. If that is the case, you understand the core understanding. So if you understand the core basic issue, then you can answer any mains question. Now what we need to do is, I'm going to explain it again, but now with data. Therefore, it gives you a little bit more perspective in that regard. So 17 years after the Right to Information Act was actually introduced, 3.15 lakh or complaints as of right now are pending with 26 information commissions across India. And this report was submitted by the Satark Nagrik Sangathan. They did a survey and checked how many backlogs were there. The highest number of pending cases was in Maharashtra, then Uttar Pradesh, Karnataka, the CIC itself, the Central Information Commission, and Bihar. So for the purpose of the examination, they will never ask you negative information, but it's Maharashtra, then UP, then the CIC, and then Bihar, and in between you have Karnataka. But what is common to most of these states is UP is a big state, Maharashtra is a big state, Karnataka is a big state, Bihar is a big state. So there is much more stockpiling in bigger states in that regard, but it's no correlation that smaller states are doing well. It's across the board the same thing. So the basic issue is, and let's try to see the data. See, as of 31st March 2019, there were 218,000 cases which were pending. Then it became, in 2021, it became 286,000. And as of 2022 June, there are 314,000 cases which are pending with different information commissions across the Indian sector. Now, why are these appeals important? Because within the RTI Act, the final appellate authorities make sure and protect that the people get their information. And if there is backlog in that sense, there is an issue. But the main issue, the first main issue is this, that if you don't furnish information, there needs to be a penalty. And there is a penalty which is within the right of the Act itself. However, the commissions failed to impose 95% of the cases where penalties should have been imposed. So you don't have a fear of penalty, so that is why you don't care in giving information. And this is a major problem when it comes to transparency and accountability. The person who has to give information, he doesn't care because he knows that the penalty won't come on him. And this is technically a form of corruption in that sense, because they know that they don't need to care in that sense. So this is a major issue with regards to what is happening. And there has been a very conscious effort in the past 3 to 4 years that the RTI has been diluted. A lot of RTI activists were even targeted. But this is something which on the face looks good, but inside it's rotten. And this is the rotten state in that regard. So the first issue you saw, which is that penalties are not being applied. The second is that 2 information commissions, for example, Jharkhand, Tripura, out of the 29 which are there in India, are totally defunct, meaning for 29 months and 15 months respectively, 29 here and 15 here, no appeal has been answered. And the information commissions don't have chiefs, which is State Information Commission has a State Information Commissioner. Manipur, Telangana, West Bengal, Andhra Pradesh don't have a chief only. So basically, the 4 structures, this is the structure in which we work, and this is the structure in which you get the information. You apply here, which is to the Central Assistant Public Information Officer or the Central Public Information Officer. If this person gives you information within 30 days, your RTI is successful. If he doesn't, he can say that I need another 15 days. Now, if this person has not furnished information, you go to the first appellate authority. This is within the state itself. The FAA didn't care. So you went to the next one, which is State Information Commissioner. Now, when we go to the State Information Commissioner, if he is also not taking anything, then there is a larger issue within the state itself. But there are complaints against the State Information Commissioner which need to be taken or are taken up by the CIC, which are also pending. So in a way, when you look at the whole structure, there is stockpiling here, there is a delay here, there's a delay here, there's a delay here. So if you are complaining against the State Information Commissioner, it is getting stuck here. If you are complaining against the first appellate authority, it is getting stuck here. Basically, there is a whole plethora of issues which are pushing the backlogs. And as per the report, West Bengal State Information Commissioner requires 24 years, 3 months to dispose of all its cases. Odisha and Maharashtra would require 5 years. And further, only Meghalaya and Mizoram states showed no waiting time. So the 2 northeastern states, which is Meghalaya and Mizoram, here there was no real backlog in that regard. Now, this is both encouraging for Meghalaya and Mizoram when it comes to their basic governance, but it at the same point of time is problematic also, because this means that be it big state or small state, except for the Northeast, the trend is the same. So you don't have to learn the structure in that regard. You don't have to learn the structure, but you need to understand the core issue here. The core issue is that somehow the authorities which need to apply penalty, for example, this would apply a penalty here. they would apply a penalty here. They would apply a penalty here. No penalties are being applied. And same way, the other way, more and more complaints are getting technically stockpiled. This is a report which was coming from, as I said, you need to remember this name, Satark Nagrik Sangathan. Please remember, it's a very important social, it's a NGO based social audit in that regard, but it's revealed a major problem in that sense. And according to Transparency International, in which we don't rank very well, but the basic point is 1/4 of all positions for information commissioners are vacant, and only 5% are women. And out of the 165 posts which are there for information commissioner, 42 are vacant, including 2 chief state information commissioners. Now, you will ask me, sir, how does an information commissioner technically get, in a way, appointed? So when you will apply for UPSC, and you will see a list of different services. There's one service called Indian Information Commissioner. Indian Information Service, IIS. And that technically is the recruiting authority within the UPSC. You get this service in that regard. Because the problem is that not all positions are advertised. So IIS, which is Indian Information Service, is a very important service because these information commissioners come from here only. But the problem is that not all vacancies as of right now are added to the total number of seats, which is technically the problem, the DOPT. So before I move on to the mains question, I'm again giving you a very simple explanation, a summary in that regard. Till this point, everybody is with me, right? Perfect. Department of Personnel and Training within the MHA, Ministry of Home Affairs. Okay. So let's understand what we were doing right now. First point, RTI is important. It's the backbone of governance and transparency in India. Second point, the issue is that there is stockpiling, or what we call as delay, in complaints and appeals. Close to 3 lakh appeals and complaints are pending. The other 2 core issues is penalties are not being applied where they should be applied. And fourth, the most important, which is that there are positions which are vacant, but the government is not filling them. So it is technically half and half. It is a problem within the system itself, but it is also something which the central government needs to take into cognizance. So what type of a question can come from here? You see, RTIs are backbone of transparency and good governance in India. Discuss the above statement in context of recent trends in RTIs in India. So technically, this question is giving you a very basic statement. RTI is the backbone of transparency and good governance. Now, this type of question is difficult because it is not telling you what, remember, not telling you what is it technically asking you for, which is negative or positive. So here you need to know the basic current affairs, and that is why we are here. You need to know that there's a major problem here. And the problem is very simply, see, introduction, body, conclusion. Never write it in the examination, for your basic reference in your mind. And the structure is going to be para, points, para. Para means paragraph, points, paragraph. Looks aesthetically better. And thereafter, you need to discuss certain issues. Now, in the introduction, you're going to say that RTI is the backbone of technically transparency and good governance in India. It creates a transparency regime, good governance, and the fact that it creates accountability. And people rely on this type of information. Now, in the body, now because it is saying discuss recent trends, you will say recently there's a trend, and now you will discuss the 2 core issues, which is no penalties and second, vacancies. Now thereafter, once you've done this, you would have to give a small 1 line saying that this is a dangerous trend when it comes to the RTI regime itself, and the government of India needs to intervene. And conclude by saying, and it doesn't matter if it's 250 words or 150 words, the basic point is that the core body remains the same. In the conclusion, you would have to say that this type of trend needs to be controlled, and there needs to be a certain way in which everything needs to be expedited. So this type of question is technically playing on what you understand of the concept itself. And it's not, remember, and it's not technically dealing with, remember, not dealing with positive or negative. Never go fully negative against the government, but you have to raise the concern in that regard, right? Perfect. Okay. So before we move to the next, I'll take up some questions. What is the cause for rapid increase in pending cases in the last 3 years? Technically, it's not a rapid increase. It's a gradual increase. It has been stockpiling since 2015-16 itself. It's a gradual, it's not rapid. The word is not rapid. What type of cases are pending majority? Again, that really doesn't matter. Though we don't know the nature of cases, mostly it's complaints. It's complaint against not getting the information, and I think 40% is appeals. But the point is, for you, that information may be not important. For me, it may be. So the nature of that doesn't really matter, because every information is important in that sense. Can't this non-application of penalty of failure to provide info within the time limit be raised with high? Again, technically, there can be a PLI which can go, but that again would not, the High Court or the Supreme Court will say that you act on it, but judicial pressure will not do anything. It can be taken up, maybe it will be taken up, but the problem is that that is not the solution. Problem, everybody knows that there is pendency in that regard. Okay. Penalty could be mostly it's monetary, and if it's not monetary, the person could be suspended, or there could be reprimands which would be given. It's not that anybody will get dismissed, but you would be made to suspend your work in that regard. Okay. This data is from which report I told you. What is the solution to this 24 years wait time? If can't solve it, then cancel it. Again, that is not technically the solution, which is to cancel everybody. You can have a special drive, which is to solve these as soon as possible. But for that, you need manpower. That is not there. You need to understand one thing. This is a vicious circle. See, there is pendency, and there is vacancies. Now what happens is, to clear this pendency, you need more people, but the more people aren't there only. If there are less people, it creates more pendency. It's a vicious circle. Technically, it's self-perpetuating itself, which is that either way it's not working. Again, that is not you're saying for Meghalaya, Mizoram, is it that they don't know about RTI? Technically, that is not the case. You can't discredit the efficiency of Meghalaya and Mizoram saying that the people don't put in that much. That is not the answer for. You need to understand this. There's something called, if it's a big state, Meghalaya, Mizoram will working with 4 people. But if Bihar can't work with 100 people, then it's not proportional to what you're doing. Efficiency should not be pushed to the people not knowing. That is a very that you're justifying the actions of the state itself. That you don't need to do. See, very simply, before we move to the next topic, what is the solution? What is the way forward? This is a very standard question which you're asking me. The way forward is 3 things. Special drive, but that needs manpower. Second, recruitment, but that technically is a burden on the exchequer, which is you and me pay taxes, we would have to pay the salary of the person. Third is that either we create a new fresh concept, which is that these will be solved, but the ones which are coming up need to be solved quicker. But this is technically not the solution, because that means that everybody who applied in the 3 lakh are worthless, and everybody who applied thereafter are worth something. That technically makes no sense. So very simply, this is an issue. The government of India is capable of solving this issue because at the end of the day, it has the capability to recruit also. It has the capability to solve this problem also. But there is a lethargy which we are seeing from the government itself in solving this issue. West Bengal is not that we are targeting West Bengal. Maharashtra is the same case. It's not political, it's institutional. And therefore, there needs to be certain reforms within the institutions itself. Right? Clear, everybody? I'm seeing your solutions, but all are hypothetical. The basic point is, how do they materialize? There are two things which are the major problems in all of your understanding, which is that most of you are saying that we need to go for a certain push, but that push needs people, and that people needs recruitment. Recruitment needs money. That's a burden. So the solution here is two-way. Either go for a special drive, or second, which is very, very specific, which is recruit more people and have to expedite them as soon as possible. The core issues you know, you automatically know the solution. Can we move on to the next one, everyone? The UPSC recruits, and there is also the low-level positions are filled up by the State Information Commission. Perfect. Okay. Now something which gives me a lot of us, a lot of happiness nowadays, which is that there's a political crisis in the United Kingdom, and there's a circularity to this. I don't believe that Rishi Sunak is at the end of the day an Indian in office, because he's at the end of the day a proper British born, very, very proper Britisher in a way. He's more Britisher than other Britishers. But there's a circularity in this concept because they were the same people who said that Indians can't rule themselves, we need to teach them self-governance, the white man's burden. And they ruled us for 200 years and did all the drama possible to say that, no, you need to be given it in a certain way. So the Morley-Minto reforms, then the Montagu-Chelmsford reforms, then the Government of India Act. Still, we don't believe that you are. Before they went, they partitioned us. So technically, Churchill would be right now turning in his grave itself. Not even Churchill, everybody else, Queen Victoria, Queen Elizabeth, everyone. The basic point of the matter is, why are we doing this? Political crisis in the United Kingdom. Firstly, it's something satisfying, but the point is that this is a cautionary tale. And why am I doing this with you? Because technically, I want to tell you that certain issues are sometimes bigger than what they seem. Liz Truss resigning after 44 days, if you count the day she's resigned, 45 days, is not something which is specific to the political crisis in Europe itself. Rather, or in UK itself, it's something related to Brexit, and rather right now it is technically Russia Ukraine which is compounding the issue, and I'll tell you how everything panned out, and thereafter we'll see the PPT. So can we discuss this? We can, right? RTI is what needs to be read in the intro part. Discuss the significance of the RTI. Okay. Now, see, first, the Britishers or the English or England itself was a very reluctant member of the EU itself, the European Union. But the EU being reluctant, what it had was very good market access. So though they never took euro, they were always on pound, they had very good market access in Europe itself. And within the EU custom union, they had very good market access, but somehow the English always felt that the EU regulations were in a way holding them down. And I'm technically taking you 7 years back. And this in turn created the Conservative Party, which is technically Churchill's party itself. The Conservative Party started a rhetoric that we would be better off if we leave the EU, which is called the Brexit. And it started as a movement, and it became a major issue of referendum in which the people chose to leave the Brexit. I'm giving you a very simplistic understanding of Brexit, but you need to understand it. And once they chose to leave the Brexit, to technically leave the EU, now the EU wanted to retaliate. which is and there was a concept, soft Brexit or hard Brexit. And the EU made the English cry in that regard. And what has happened is that in the past 4 years, the market access of the pound or the UK itself to the EU market has shrunk quite dramatically. So it is not technically getting the same market access. And now if you would have been hearing or you would have been reading the newspaper, you would know that Prime Minister Narendra Modi is going to meet Sunak very, very soon. And there's a concept of free trade agreement which is going around. And that free trade agreement is in a way being seen as a lifeline which India is giving to England. England's GDP has stagnated in the past 4 years. And right now, if the FTA, the free trade agreement with India, does not come through, England may fully tank its economy. And before we came into the session, there was a tweet which came from the Bank of England itself that as of right now, the Bank of England has declared that England is in a recession and they will only come out after mid-2024. So for 1 year, what the IMF and the World Bank is also talking about, that the world is going to go into a recession. The basic point is that Brexit created a lot of problems for the British government itself, for the Conservative government. Now, Boris Johnson became a person who was seen as a solution. He was the one who wanted to work out the hard or soft Brexit. Technically, it was a hard Brexit in that regard. And now basically, Liz Truss came at a time when Britain is in a proper economic crisis. But what we need to understand is that the economic crisis is not specific to Britain. The economic crisis is rather linked to Russia-Ukraine. How? See, over the years, in the Cold War period itself and the post-disintegration of USSR era, 1991, the Europeans became very, 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 very dependent on Russian gas. And the Germans, Nord Stream 1, Nord Stream 2, be it the Polish, be it most of Eastern Europe, Russian gas was something very, very pivotal for their energy security. Now, Russia is at war with Ukraine, and the NATO thereafter applied sanctions over Russia, which were in turn doubled down with the concept that we will not buy Russian gas. Now, this has done one thing, which is energy inflation has doubled and is at a 33-year high in Europe. Therefore, gas prices and basic energy prices have doubled up. Now, this has led or compounded to the pandemic plus Brexit crisis within the UK. And now, add to it what Liz Truss wanted to do, and now Britain is in a proper crisis with regards to what Rishi Sunak has now technically inherited. What he's inherited is a proper recession-driven, fully stagnated economy of British. Now, why was she removed? Till this point, everybody is following me? You understand the Russia-Ukraine connection? We'll discuss it again through the PPT. Perfect. Now, if you understand this, see, what Liz Truss said was, I'm going to do one thing, which is, they have now 3 prime ministers in 3 months. That's a record in themselves. Now, the basic point is that she said that there is a tax bracket, there are certain tax brackets in Britain. She said, I will make sure, or I will give the top tier who are paying the most amount of tax, not the everyday man, the top tier taxpayer tax breaks, which is they will not have to pay taxes. And in the basic concept of what we call as trickle-down economics, that this would impact the lowest level, therefore creating more jobs. That was her dumb understanding in that regard. Would never work even on paper. But this is what she technically won against Rishi Sunak in the first round itself. She said that I will give a tax break to not the person who pays, for example, £100 as taxes. I will give a tax break to a person who is paying £2 million as taxes. Now, what happened was that the people then asked that if you are not taking direct taxes from these people, how will you then technically make up for that receipt? So the government income would shrink. So if the government income is going to shrink, where is that money going to come from? And for that, she did not have an answer. And the answer she had in her mind was, we will borrow. We will borrow. We will borrow from the market. Now what happens is that as soon as this news comes out that the market would be used to borrow, the market starts to crash in England itself. The London Stock Exchange does not take this concept very good or technically very positively, and the Bank of England has to in turn intervene to make sure that the market does not crash. Now she's lost confidence. Her basic plan, on which she was technically elected, didn't work, and she's gone. And Rishi Sunak comes in, and now he inherits, firstly, the 45 billion pounds less what Liz Truss gave to those people, and he has other issues to also tackle in that regard. So why we are doing this topic is that this is a cautionary tale, because we are also in that type of development stage in that regard. It's very easy to derail your economy via very haste moves in that sense. So the political crisis in UK is technically not something which is coming up or has been brewing up in the past 1 year. Its origin goes back to Brexit. Thereafter, it comes to the Russia-Ukraine crisis. If you add these two together, there is a stagnation in GDP, and therefore there's a political crisis. She came in with an agenda which technically nobody liked, and that is why Rishi Sunak is there. You understand this concept, everyone? Yeah, the post-pandemic issues were there. Pandemic itself hit the economy very well. Okay, perfect. UK means United Kingdom. Now, why are we discussing this topic? 3 prime ministers in 3 months. And Liz Truss now has the distinction of being the shortest serving British prime minister. And she's taken this crown away from a person called George Canning, who died in office in 1827 after 119 days. 120 days, not even 120 days, 119 days. She was there for 44 days. And basically, if you add the day she resigned, it becomes 45 days. And as you would have seen that there was a basic joke going on, would she outrun a lettuce? A lettuce means she would actually, the lettuce would start to rotten. Would the lettuce outrun or out-survive Liz Truss itself? As soon as she came, she technically was gone within 2 days because her plan was not liked by anybody. Now, what is the core issue? The core issue is this graph, which you see here, which is the inflation data from UK. If you look at it, the consumer price index in UK is more or less constant with a little bit of spike. But this is technically energy inflation. It is at the highest it has ever been in 33 years. And very simply, UK at this point of time is reeling under a lot of economic problems. People are not able to pay for basic gas. They're very cold countries. They need the gas to heat their houses. And with electricity, gas, and other fuels increasing exponentially, people are facing an issue. Now, this energy inflation therefore gets linked up with the Russia-Ukraine crisis. Because at the end of the day, the Russia-Ukraine crisis is the reason why energy inflation is there. And energy inflation, in that sense, is the way or is the reason why UK is not able to survive back. So what was her basic vision? Her basic vision was 45 billion pounds, a tax break to create jobs and improve the living standard of people. The market tanked over the concept because how will you pay up for this $45 billion or 45 billion pounds rather, 45 billion pounds. And this question she had no answer for. So the Bank of England had to intervene and she resigned. So we understand, I hope all of you understand why did she resign. Is this concept clear? Everyone? It's clear. Now what we need to understand is that if yes, if that, then what does Rishi Sunak in that sense inherit? That's a very important question. Firstly, He has a distinction of being the first Indian origin Prime Minister, first Hindu Prime Minister, first person of color as Prime Minister in England, which is in a way more satisfying to us than anything else. But remember, he does not embody Indian interest, because a lot of people started to say now the Kohinoor is going to come back. He's a Britisher. Please remember that he is a Britisher. Don't think that he will sell the English to us itself, or he will let us colonize. He is a proper Britisher, anti-immigrant conservative. He believes that Indians should not be there in Southall. He believes that, and he technically is not a working class man. He has double the value of the King of England, Charles III, and the Queen. So he is not a normal Indian like you and me. He's not an Indian who understands what is the problems of a Southall Indian in UK. He is totally different. So please don't take heart to the concept that an Indian is there. No. He's a Britisher. He is Indian origin. That's okay. Perfect. Now, what does he inherit? See, this is what he inherits, which is a major drop in the GDP of UK in the past 2 to 3 years. You know, basically it's the pandemic and technically the Brexit which made this problem compound. So there's a crisis which came after Brexit, and it became tougher for the UK to trade with its closest trade partners in Europe, and the higher compliance costs, because EU still has that regulations, hit these smaller businesses, and several businesses were forced out, and therefore the market share became more and more monopolistic. People lost money. If you add this crisis to the energy inflation itself, we technically get a recipe for disaster. And what we also believe as of right now is Liz Truss, before she's gone, has made the Indians' job very, very difficult, because he has now a derailed governmental financial system also, because he's short 45 billion pounds, which he's already given. So what is the concept? What is the point? What is the point? It's a cautionary tale. Before I move to the question, I would technically like you to understand the concept again, but in a better way. Which is that why are we doing it? We're not sadistic that we'll enjoy UK's destruction. We do. That's a separate issue altogether. But the basic point of the matter is that this is dangerous. This is dangerous because we can also go on the same trajectory. So any form of economic policy has a certain repercussion. Liz Truss is gone because her plan was bad. Rishi Sunak is there, but he's by chance there, technically was rejected by his own party. And at the end of the day, the Conservatives have no idea what they're doing, because they can't come to the or deliver the mandate which they promised under Boris Johnson, which was that we will give you a soft Brexit with proper development. What was expected was that once Britain is going to leave the EU, it will have a lot of opportunities to have very separate bilateral agreements, which technically did not happen again, and in turn creates a crisis at such proportion that he started to struggle within 5-6 days itself. Talking about a free trade agreement with India itself shows that there's a need to reinvigorate the economy. Now, whatever question can be asked to you, it could not be direct, but it could be tangential. How do you ask this type of question? The Russia-Ukraine crisis has demonstrated the inherent fragility of energy security in Europe, and the United Kingdom is an indicator of this, or is an indicator of this fragility. Of this fragility, you have to write it in 250 words. Now, very simply, this question is technically not United Kingdom. It's something bigger. So, in the introduction, body, conclusion. In the introduction, you're going to talk about the Russia-Ukraine crisis, because it is technically talking about Russia-Ukraine. Russia-Ukraine are at war at this point of time. Plebiscite has been held. 4 areas have been annexed by Russia. Russia has been sanctioned by different parts of the different European countries and technically the NATO. Now you have to talk about how does that impact Europe. It impacts Europe because of the fact that it has increased the energy prices because Europe was very, very dependent on Russian gas and oil. Now, the second part of the body you're going to talk about, that the best case scenario or the best example of this fragility of energy security is the United Kingdom, because this energy inflation has in turn created a domino effect in England, wherein because of this energy crisis, remember, because of this energy crisis, the UK government has become extremely unstable. And this means that this can be the story of any country, and there is a thing going around that Germany is also facing a lot of issues. We also know that Italy has now elected a prime minister, the first woman prime minister, but she's technically Lady Mussolini because she is a fascist, proper fascist, far right party, and they are now on the course of doing something which they did in the interwar period. Italy was the first to fall, which is Mussolini. Then came Hitler. So when far right parties start to win, it means that when there's a lot of distress, this is what Hitler used to say, that I am the man who has the solution. And that one man with charismatic leadership will say that I will take you far. This is where people start to misuse democracy. Democracy is fragile. We need to protect it. But Russia-Ukraine is technically showing that basically it can topple down governments also in Europe at this point of time. And Europe, the mighty Europe as we call them, have shown that they were much more fragile than any other country, and they are not worthy of being technically called the great powers or what they are today in that regard. So very simply, the political crisis in UK shows and is technically the first nail in the coffin for Europe itself. Germany, Italy, all are showing certain signs of distress, and these distresses only lead to democratic problematic scenarios. Right? Everyone, clear? Perfect. So let's take up some questions and then we'll move on. Okay. Why wasn't he supported against Liz Truss? Because technically he was talking about a more nuanced economic program, and Liz Truss was saying, I'll do a tax break. That is why he lost. Now economy only ground, he's technically been selected because they don't have anybody else. Boris Johnson was being considered, but he does not have a good opinion within the people itself. Sir, as energy prices are its peak, it hurts most all temperate regions. Why the political crisis only observed in England? As I said, that's a good question. Technically, it's the beginning. Don't think this is the end. This is the beginning of the end for Europe. And technically, Russia has now shown that that economic sanctions are just a drama. And those economic sanctions have backfired so badly on Europe that right now all of them are reeling, and Nord Stream 1, Nord Stream 2 has been shut by Russia. The winter is coming. It is truly coming in Europe. So it's a very interesting phase in European history in that sense. Brexit, as I said, EU, European Union, Customs Union, Britain was always a part of it, but a reluctant one, never took the euro currency. It allowed it. You have to have certain phytosanitary and the custom export import. There were certain rules and regulations you needed to actually comply to. I'm trying to simplify it because Brexit is much more than that. But the basic point is Britain believed that it was being pushed away or it was losing money because it was within the EU. So Brexit was the British exit out of the EU. Brexit. How many months it takes to elect? How many months does it take to elect? That's not the point. They have 3 months, because it's not that the party has changed. It's the Conservative Party. It's that the Prime Minister has changed. Imagine we have Finance Minister also as Prime Minister. He was technically the previous Finance Minister under Boris Johnson. How will tax cuts create jobs? That's a very good question. You should ask Liz Truss about that, because she didn't understand that question itself. If you give this tax break to the actual highest, how does it create jobs? It doesn't. So that's a very good question. You should have been sent to 10 Downing Street to ask that question. How? So she didn't have an answer for that. So her policy was give the tax break to the ultra rich. Technically, will never go to trickle down economics. Trickle down means that it will impact everybody downwards. Clear? Can we move on? Can we move on, everyone? It's not about freebies. It's not populist. It's just that it's bad economics. Now, something which should never exist in India, but unfortunately it does, which is the concept of anti-superstition law in India. Now, what is the concept here? We can discuss this, right? Everybody's ready, everybody's with me, no issues till the first two, because I need to get your affirmation. This is how I work. Okay. Good politics in bad economics, whatever you want to call it. Now, when we talk about anti-superstition law, we have recently received a horrific case from Kerala where two women were sacrificed under human sacrifice, ritualistic human sacrifice as it is called, ritualized human sacrifice under the concept of witch hunting, Dian concept. Now, very simply, we live in a world where information is on each and every platform we look at, phone, mobile, anything. But still in India, these concepts persist. And there is a major debate that in India, technically, there is no law which is a central law over superstition. There are state laws, but they're not enough because that is piecemeal approach. Now you would say that, sir, is it such a big issue that we need a central law over it? Now the answer to that question very simply is 88 people died in 2020 and 74 have already died in 2021 because of either human sacrifice or death related to certain superstitions or tantrics. Now, very simply, all of these are murder. They were technically killed by people over their superstition. Now, why am I doing this topic? Because this is something which is also social issues and is also related to law. Why is it social issue? Because it shows a certain tendency within the Indian subcontinent or in India itself that we still are somehow stuck up in 18th, 19th century. If it was 10, 15, still not justified. Even 1 is not justified. But 88 is a very big number. 88 murders because somebody felt that a woman was possessed by something. This is absurd. Absurd. So you need to understand one thing very, very clearly, that there is an absurdity to something that this persists in India. This is nothing but close to Sati in that regard. And it took us, the British, to open up our eyes about Sati. But somehow still we are stuck up in that India of 18th, 19th century, that we need to discuss something like this. And it's horrific. So the core issue here is that there are deaths which are happening. However, there is no central law. State laws are working, but within that state itself, it has no impact. More than that, there is no law in each and every state. And tantrics, these people who have lost their mind, you can give them any abuse you want. Use these gaps to go around in different parts of India to technically use the gullibility of people and the illiteracy in India to use people to argue that women somehow are part of this major concept of witch. Do witches exist? No. There's no debate over that. I hope there's no debate. Second, Does this have a place in 2022? No, it doesn't. Third, is there need for the center to intervene? Yes, it does, because 88 is too big a number, and it's not specific to any state with its origins. It's not specific to tribals. It's not specific to anything. It is not specific to anything. It is specific to the human psyche. So the data is not, it's coming only from the states where there is a substantial tribal population. Again, this is called passing the buck. Don't justify the actions by saying that it's only in a state where there is this. Don't say that. What you are doing is this, you will do in the interview also. And then you'll get caught up in such a bad loop that the board will not leave you. Very simply, the question to superstition, Andhvishwas, as it is called, is it is out of place in the scientific world in India. Even our fundamental duties say that you need to develop a scientific temper. So it is a duty to be of an Indian, and we need to, because you would have gone to different places. For example, you've gone to a lot of public places, a lot of bus stands, where you would have seen these type of basic pamphlets and advertisements. I can guarantee you would have seen advertisements in this day and age where people would be saying that we will take away different types of diseases by just putting a broom over your head. So basically, they will take away cancer, diabetes, everything. And that is absurd. That is absurd. And women are a very vulnerable group within our society itself. And we need to make sure that their vulnerability is not pushed further. Right? Core issue is clear. Why are we discussing it? Okay, right? Perfect. Now, context is 2 women, part of ritualistic human sacrifice. We have a fragmented legal system where there's no central law over anti-superstition. Now, the point is, awareness is required, and that is why we are here. The point is that, is it such a big issue? Yes, it is. Witchcraft death and human sacrifice have been, in a way, fluctuating between 16 to 6. The basic point is 2021 data tells us that 6 deaths have been linked to the concept of human sacrifices within ritualistic human sacrifice, 68 linked to what we call as witchcraft, the concept of using Tantra Mantra Tantric Baba concept. Kerala has 2 cases, and the maximum number of cases have been reported from Chhattisgarh, 20, thereafter Madhya Pradesh, 18, and Telangana, 11. And in 2020 itself, we had 88 deaths due to witchcraft, 11 of which were linked to human sacrifice. See, witchcraft is something, human sacrifice is technically killing that person because she is possessed by something, which has no place in this world in that regard. But if somebody says, is this an issue? It is. 88, 74 are not small numbers. And basically, there needs to be a certain type of intervention which needs to come through. What has been the intervention till this point? See, there's no basic mandate. There's no basic mandate when it comes to center. Section 302, which is technically murder related, takes cognizance of human sacrifice as murder, but the police has to wait for the murder to happen. Same way you have section 295A. These are both IPC, Indian Penal Code. It says don't look in the constitution for this. IPC 302 and 295A technically are there to make sure that deliberately tantric practices cannot be taken forward. This is technically murder. This says deliberate malicious acts intended to outrage religious feelings and religious beliefs. This is to discourage the process. Our constitution says that we need to develop, as citizens of India, scientific temper, humanism, and spirit of inquiry and reform. Somehow we are forgetting that duty. We remember all the rights, but we don't remember our duties. And there is also an act which is called the Drugs and Magical Remedies Act of 1954, which says that you cannot advertise any remedy which is based on magic. But we still see that. But the basic point is that superstitious activities, superstitious remedies, all are still part of our discourse, and we as Indians need to take it out of our system. Now, what are the states which intervened? What has been the state intervention in that regard? So Bihar was the first state to have a law which is against witchcraft, which is called the Prevention of Witch Practice Act. of 1999. Thereafter, Jharkhand 2001. And under this act is very simple. The problem is that if you identify somebody as a witch, you can be put into jail for 3 months or fined 1,000 rupees. You get today coffee for 1,000 rupees. So very simply, the penalty is too less and the arrest is also too less. So very simply, these are very lenient. 3 months and 1,000 rupees. 1,000 rupees everybody has in their pocket. So I said that person is a witch and you have to just pay 1,000 rupees. That is absurd. This is the problem, that the legal system itself is very, very vague. Chhattisgarh had it in 2005. Thereafter, Orissa, Maharashtra, Rajasthan, and Assam and Karnataka. Karnataka, the latest in that regard. But what this means is that each and every state has its own peculiarity. There's no central mandate. So there is a need for a law. There's a need for a law, and there's a need for a central law. And that central law needs to be not lenient. That does not need to be lenient. It needs to be, whatever I've written here are only the states which have a law. So asking me if this state is there, if that state is there is futile. It isn't, because if it's not in the list, it isn't there. The basic point of the matter is there a need for a central law? Yes, there is, because this is going out of hand now. Second, do we have place for this in 2022? No, we don't. Technically, this has no place in our culture today. We as Indians are the ones who have sent a satellite to Mars. So basically, we are the nation of ISRO, not of killing or human sacrifices. So we need to be very, very clear of this type of an understanding. Now, what type of question can come in the exam? Very simply, in light of recent cases in India, discuss the need for a central law for anti-superstition and witch hunting. So what is the concept here? Introduction, body, conclusion. In the introduction, we are going to talk about the recent trend, which is the current affairs issue, which is that there have been certain cases which have come from Kerala, and this is not something which is totally new. Over a period of time, we've seen a lot of data. So you can either talk about the data in the introduction, or you can talk it in the body itself. You have to talk about the 88, 74, the NCRB data, and how this is technically killing. You also need to talk about how there are state legislation, but there is no real central mandate except for IPC, which is Indian Penal Code. Then in the second part of the body, you are going to talk about why there is need. There is a need because there is legislative gaps, people are still being exploited, deaths are still happening, therefore there's a need to intervene, and a central intervention would be important because these laws are too lenient also. Conclusion, very simply, that the way forward in this concept is the central government needs to intervene, cooperative federalism needs to come through, Indian government needs to take cognizance of the fact that this is an issue, and there's a debate which is going on right now that the center needs to intervene, and the center should intervene in that sense. The questions, 150 words is more than enough for this. See, technically the answer matters, not the words as of right now. Clear, everyone? No issues till this point? Now I'll take some questions and we can move on to the most interesting in that regard. How our law will solve the current case in what law will do is technically deter. It's too lenient as of right now. And there needs to be an awareness campaign. The government of India has the capability of doing that. No one else. That is the basic point. The government of India needs to take intervention, needs to intervene in that regard, because there is a need in that sense to be on the same page with the states itself. It's an issue and we need to understand that in that sense. Okay. Again, you are saying how will central law do something? First is to create a deterrent, which is that a law which is foolproof. The laws are not foolproof. Second, if the central government takes cognizance of this, every state has to take cognizance of it. Therefore, it creates an awareness. So superstition will not just go like this because center said something. No, it's about creating deterrence. Why is that you don't go and murder somebody so easily? Because there's a deterrent. There's a law which makes it very, very hard, not very, very hard, but technically discourages you from doing that. So there needs to be a law which the states are not producing. So the center needs to implement. And because there are states which have not even implemented, even having cases, means that there needs to be a little bit more awareness with the central government, the state government, everybody else. So that it's the central law, what it will do is the state would not need to legislate something after it has happened. Getting my point? Right? Perfect. Now, can we start this topic? This is the most interesting, impacts each one of us in that regard. Can we do that? Varun, it's not about the difficulty, it's about consensus. It's actually about consensus. Okay. What will be the penalties? The penalty right now is only 3 months and 1,000 rupees. It could be at least made 7 years in jail and 50 lakh rupees. Why not? Okay. Now, this is the most interesting of all of them, which is related to Google. Now, you would have seen one thing, and I'll take it out of this. This is how UPSC is about living the current affairs. You could have a phone of Realme, Redmi, Oppo, Vivo, except for Apple, any phone you have. When you buy that phone, what are the pre-installed apps? I'm asking you this question. Gmail, Chrome, Google Meet, Play Store, YouTube. Very good. Perfect. So very simply, Google apps are automatically pre-installed. And if I ask you right now, you can disable the app, but you can't uninstall it. Can we agree to this? You can't uninstall a Google app. Yes? You can disable it, you can't uninstall it. Perfect. So we all are on the same page. Now, what the Competition Commission of India has said is, this is technically anti-competitive on the part of Google. This is anti-competitive on the part of Google. Now, how does this work out? How does it work out? See, there is something called a MADA. MADA. I have the full form, MADA, Mobile Application Distributions Agreement. Mobile Application Distributors Agreement. So, when a phone is made by, for example, Realme or whatever, etc., the original equipment manufacturer. Who is the original equipment manufacturer in this case? Realme. It's Realme. Realme has made the original equipment, right? So under MADA, which is Mobile Application, you're asking me, listen to me also, Mobile Application Distributors Agreement. Mobile Application Distributors Agreement. Under MADA, where Realme doesn't make its own OS. It doesn't make its own OS. They will put Android. Android is technically made by Google. So what Google does is, when it gives Android to Realme, it says that my Google Suite, which is technically Gmail, YouTube, Maps, this and that, basic concept of different apps, Gmail, YouTube, this and that. The Google argues to the original equipment manufacturer that the Google Suite needs to be pre-installed and cannot be uninstalled. Cannot be uninstalled. We can agree to this? We all have done this. MADA full form I will give you, Mobile Application Distributors Agreement. You're getting caught up somewhere, though doesn't matter. It's written in the PPT. Listen to me. Now, the Competition Commission now scrutinize this concept. Competition Commission in India is a statutory body, checks anti-competitive behavior, monopolistic behavior in the market. And when the Competition Commission of India scrutinized this, it asked Google a question. Why do you not allow the consumer to uninstall your app? Why is that Android is the software? Why is the software company dictating what the hardware company is going to do? So Google said, it's a competitive market. We are competing with Apple because the other most important OS is iOS. There are two basic ones, Android and iOS. Now, Google said that we have to compete with iOS. We have to compete with Apple. So therefore, we need to make sure that this type of agreement is there, that an original equipment manufacturer has to install the Google suite and therefore pre-install certain things and cannot be uninstalled. Now, the Competition Commission said a very important line. And you need to remember this because this is going to set up a tone. Competition Commission argued that you and Apple are different. What the Competition Commission said was, Apple is a company which produces high-end smart devices, and it is through these high-end smart devices, which is nothing but iPhone, it gains its revenue and not through iOS. So what the Competition Commission said was, the iPhone is technically where the money is generated. Therefore, Apple is both a hardware and software company. It gives a user interaction, iOS, but it is originally a hardware company. It's an original equipment manufacturer. So Apple technically is a hardware plus software company. This is what the Competition Commission argued. And thereafter they said a very important line, which is that Google is a company which is based on subscription, which is that they use their apps to bring the people on a certain platform, which is subscribed to a certain number of people. For example, YouTube. For example, you have Google searches. Basically, you don't make the hardware. You only make the software which brings the people where you want to bring them. So very simply, what the Competition Commission has argued is that Google is a software company. And under this concept, it's a very important concept, under this concept, because Google has been fined all across the world, in the EU also, under this concept, now there's a fine which needs to be paid by Google because it has acted in a way wherein it has dictated as a software manufacturer to the hardware something which does not allow us choice. As a buyer of a Xiaomi phone or a Vivo phone, I should have the option to delete Google because technically Google is not pivotal or is not the original equipment manufacturer. You can't do it on a Pixel phone, that's a separate issue altogether, but you can do it on any other phone. At the core, very simply, the Apple argument did not stand, and the way the Competition Commission has been very clear in demarcating that you are a software company now creates precedence. You understand the core issue? Why have they given a penalty? Because it is anti-market behavior. It's violating freedom of choice. Perfect. Right? Can we agree to this, everyone? Okay. Now there is also another important issue which I'll talk here and then we'll talk about the PPT. See, The News Broadcasters and Digital Association, the NBDA, has recently alleged, and now you will see another penalty which is going to come to Google, has alleged that because Google is both the person which creates ads and is also the person who gives you ads. See, when you go to, for example, even the Hindu or Indian Express, in the digital version, you would see ads on both sides in between. The revenue which is generated on digital platform is through ads. The same is true for Hindu paper also. Most of it is ads only. It's technically 5 pages of paper and 5 pages of ads, but that is the way they get money. Now, the basic point of the matter is that on a digital platform, there's a vendor who gives you ads. So what the NBDA has technically argued is that Google, when it has such an important presence via Google search, that we have no other option but to go to Google as a vendor. Vendor meaning they are the ones who provide you ads, which you can sell further. Now, if, for example, I, Abhishek, want to give an ad on the Hindu newspaper online website, I would have to contact Google, and Google would take, for example, 100 rupees from me, and just to give this ad to the Hindustan Times or the Hindu, Google would charge something from the Hindu itself. Now, how they are sharing that money is 51%, 49%. Out of that, 51 rupees is going to the Hindustan Times and 49 rupees is going to Google, which is absurd. 50-50 Google is taking. And what the News Broadcasters Digital Association is arguing is, because there's no alternative, we have to agree to this 51-49 concept. So very simply, here again Google is acting like a monopoly. This is the core issue here. Google, because it knows that there is no one else, even when you have to look for the questions which I'm giving you, you will Google it. When you will Google it, you're Googling it. Googling it is an acronym in itself. Very simply, you need Google as a search engine. Google has become so important that very simply, it is acting in such a way that it can ask for any amount of money, you have to pay it. So very simply, this is the beginning of Google's penalty story, because the CCI has imposed 1,337 crore penalty on Google because it is abusing its dominant position in multiple markets in Android mobile device ecosystem. This is something very important. You cannot act in an anti-market way or in a monopolistic way. You are the only one. You technically can't just dictate anything. Now, what is the core issue? The CCI examined various practices of Google with respect to licensing of proprietary mobile applications, Play Store, Google Search, Google Chrome, YouTube. Google argued that because it has competitive constraints against Apple, it has to do what it does in the OS ecosystem. And that is why it uses the Mobile Application Distribution Agreement, the MADA, to make sure that the person or that the mobile manufacturer, the OEM, which is the original equipment manufacturer, needs to put in Android, and it has to make it mandatory for it not to be pre-installed. Now, what the Competition Commission has argued is very, very important. The Competition Commission argues Google's business was primarily based on a vertical integrated smart device ecosystem and focused on the sale of high-end smart devices. Basically, it is technically a OEM wherein it is selling a very important device, and within that device comes iOS. On the other hand, what the CCI, and this is very groundbreaking because Google has been evading a lot of things in that regard. And what it is arguing is, Google's business was found to be driven by the ultimate intent of increasing users on its platform so that they interact with their revenue earning services, i.e., online search, which directly affects online advertising of Google. So very simply, the presence of that simple bar on your home screen right now, which has that G here, is technically a way Google is gaining money, because as soon as you touch it, it goes to the Google server and there it starts to show ads, and these ads are technically what Google earns money from. So very simply, Google is a software company and this is a hardware company. Therefore, your basic reference that we are competing with Apple does not hold. Therefore, the CCI concluded that the mandatory pre-installation of entire Google mobile suite under MADA and their prominent placement amounted to imposition of unfair condition on the device manufacturer. Very simply, Google cannot force Realme, Xiaomi, anybody to make sure that the Google suite is already loaded. This is extremely significant. You don't understand the significance right now, but you will as you go forward, because Google has been doing anything. Today, if Google just says one thing: pay me 5 rupees or I will stop your Gmail account. You will pay that 5 rupees within 1 minute. Not even 1 minute, within 2 seconds. Because your whole world will stop if that Gmail account does not work. Google literally controls you. And if Google has so much power, there was a need for somebody to technically stand up against it. And that is what the CCI has done it. CCI has been the first body across the world which has very clearly said that Google is not a hardware company. It's a software company. Therefore, it cannot be mandated that the Google suite is already there. I'll give you a very simple example of this also. When you buy a laptop, for example, does the laptop already come pre-installed with Adobe, what is called Acrobat Reader, which is used for PDFs? No, it doesn't. Technically, it doesn't. Though Adobe is technically the leading company which makes software to read the PDF word itself, the PDF extension. Why is it that it is not pre-installed? Because technically, Adobe is not following what technically Google is doing, making it mandatory for a software company to dictate the hardware. This is very, very important. You need to realize this. The same way Google Chrome does not come on your laptop. Why is that your phone? And you would have realized one more thing. If you take a Xiaomi phone today, though they were very adamant previously, if you take a Xiaomi phone today, you can uninstall their MI community and all that useless apps which are there. You can still uninstall 3-4 basic apps which are there, but are called bloatware in that regard. Basic point is, why is that I have to use Gmail only and I can't remove it? This is anti-competitive behavior. Clear, everyone? The basic point is clear. You understand the basic concept. Google is under a lot of scrutiny from all of different parts of the world. The EU has also put in, I think, close to 900 million euros. There was a basic thing on that. So it's penalties they are paying. Google is doing what it's doing. It's known to do best. It's controlling the market, and that is not something which you can do. And technically, not that Apple is very holier than thou. Apple is doing it in the hardware market. Google is doing it in the software market. Amazon does it in the retail market. So there are these 4 giants: McDonald's, the Apple Corporation, which is called ABC Alphabet, And technically you have Facebook, technically Mark Zuckerberg is shooting himself in the face itself with metaverse, but basic point was Facebook, Google, Apple, and what we call as Amazon were the four basic giants which control everything. In India, it's Jio in a way, because Jio has a lot of competition from Airtel. So that is technically not the case of Amazon or Google. Or as of right now, if you don't have an alternative, you buy any phone, it will have Android only. So Google is using that monopolistic concept, right? Okay. So significance, 4-5 important points here. First significance is very simply, for the first time, there has been a demarcation. The demarcation is that Google is a software company. Second, just because you are the only alternative as Android, you cannot dictate. And third is that Google has been acting in a very anti-market way, or what we call as monopolistic behavior. Monopolistic behavior. Okay. See, Google makes Pixel, but that is not one phone you make every 1 year is not technically don't become an OEM. But on Pixel, you can't, that argument is not going to be applied on Pixel because Pixel is a Google made phone itself. That is why they're making their own chip also nowadays, Tensor. They use Snapdragon. Snapdragon is dictating what Google does. So basically they're making their own chip which does not work. Same way how iPhones have their own chips. So that way. So see, the basic point is nobody is good, but it's that Google has been acting suspiciously. So what type of question can come from here? Google's behavior in the digital market space, both as a supplier and intermediary, has come under considerable scrutiny. Discuss the above statement in the context of the recent tussle with the Competition Commission of India, 250 words. So an interesting question. How technically these two things interact in that sense. And you would need to give a very nuanced understanding. That is why I gave a little bit more time to this concept, which is that you have intro, body, conclusion. Again, as always, don't have to write it down. And Google's behavior in the digital market space has been under scrutiny. But here it says supplier and intermediary. It's talking about two issues. So you will say introduction is going to be the current affairs part, which is that recently Competition Commission of India has imposed 1,000 crore fine on Google. Don't need to remember the exact amount, but has given a major fine on Google. Now, what is the context of that? So you will say Google is supplier and intermediary of two things. It is the supplier in a way of the software called Android, and it is the intermediary in the context of ads. So very simply, you will say that there has been scrutiny over Android's behavior and Google's behavior when it's pushing Androids to the OEMs, which is the original equipment manufacturer, and that has shown a lot of anti-market behavior. The same way as an intermediary with Google Ads, it is asking for 49% of cut in the revenue, or the revenue share, or the revenue distribution is 51-49, which is quite high for any other marketplace or any other intermediary in that regard. So in both cases, Google is using its dominant position, the only one to be there, to ask for absurd demands. Under MADA, it is making them make sure that they are not being uninstalled. And here, because it is the only vendor in that regard, 49% of the revenue is being shared, which is a very big amount in that regard. Therefore, be it supplier or be it intermediary, Google is technically acting in a very suspicious way, as an anti-market way, as a monopolistic company. And you conclude by saying OEM is original equipment manufacturer. Then with regards to the conclusion itself, 250 words, so you have 30 words to play with. So basically we'll say that Google's behavior needs to change, and the CCI has taken a good call by actually creating precedents all across the world by very categorically demarcating that Google is a software company, not a hardware company. Done? Clear, everybody? No issues? I'll take some questions and then we can move on. What is Google's main source of income? Technically, it sells our data. That is one. The second would be that it takes ad money. So Google would get money from ads. It gives you what are called personalized ads. So that is technically selling your data. Selling data. At the same point of time, CCI is Competition Commission of India. At the same point of time, it is also selling the Android OS. So every mobile which is there, Android, they need to pay a premium for that. So there's a lot of it has very diverse channels in that regard. If Google fails to give penalty, then what does CCI do? Technically, if it will do that, CCI can mandate the government of India, or technically recommend, not mandate, but recommend to the government of India to ban Google, which technically won't be possible, because then how do you send that WhatsApp message to ban Google when your phone itself does not have Google? So Google knows it has too much power at this point of time, that basically it is so pivotal that you cannot use anything else. And then you have to pay a premium, have to go to iPhones, which are technically useless phones with a good iOS, with a good OS. They sell you outdated hardware for good OS. And that's a separate issue altogether. Okay. Because if you look at the battery capacities of iPhones, you would know how it is. CCI itself has taken the matter to impose penalty on Google, and some entity has complained as Google's monopolies from. Again, this is not sudden action. When it comes to the 4951 concept, it has been reported for 3 years now. And the second one is that the original equipment manufacturers were the ones who took this to the CCI. CCI does not take it. It can take it, what we call as suo motu also, which is in itself. But this was actually taken by the different companies. If Google is secondary search tool, then what is primary? Who said that it is a secondary search tool? It is the primary search tool. Only hardware companies should be given permission for mandatory. Basically, if you are producing the hardware, they can say that for that hardware you are certain for software. So basically, if the OEM is agreeing with it, it's okay. But they are not agreeing with. Here it's technically between the OEM and Google itself. It's a tussle. Original equipment manufacturer, I've said it the 11th time now. Original equipment manufacturer is the one who's saying that Android is being sold at a very high premium. So that is the basic point. Nobody likes Google, but you can't live without it. That is the basic problem here. We don't have an alternative. The alternative is not what we call as iOS. Adobe is technically free. You have to pay for its premium services. There are competition authorities all across. EU has a competition commission type authority. It has also done that. How penalizing Google benefits? It does not benefit. It only creates deterrent. You need to understand this is all about deterrence. This comes under GS paper 1 and 3 both. 1 because Competition Commission is a statutory body, and 3 because it is talking about OEMs and technically science and technology. So it's both 1 and 3 both. 1, 3 and 2 also in that sense. So it's GS paper 2, 3 in a way. Can under the Google topic we can mention IT? Yes, you can talk about intermediaries, guidance, digital media, ethics code, but where do you have the space to write it? I'm not asking you about that. 250 words is a lot of very less words. Okay. So with this, let's move to the last topic. Can we do this, everyone? Great. So now we need to understand a very small topic, but an interesting one. I will use as an opportunity to teach you something here, which is the concept of Modhera, India's first 24/7 solar powered village. Now the Sun Temple in Modhera was in a lot of news because technically Gujarat elections are coming, but the basic point is that it's the first 24/7 solar powered village. Even the way it was projected was that it is a new groundbreaking technology which will make villages in a way self-sufficient in that regard. But for me, why is it important? Because it's important because of the fact that in GS paper 1 we have art and culture. And now you need to know basic data for both prelims and mains in that sense. And I will also give you basic data related to Modhera. What style does Modhera, Sun Temple Modhera fall under? Sun Temple Modhera is what style of temple? Solanki is okay, the specific. Not circular, not Chalukya is technically the subset. Nagara. It's a Nagara style temple, but it has two very basic exceptions, which I need to discuss with you. So very simply, Prime Minister declared Modhera as a village in the district of Gujarat as the first solar powered village in that sense. But the beauty of the Sun Temple at Modhera is that it is Nagara style with two exceptions. So what would be technically Nagara style? Nagara style would be no water tank, would be no boundary, would be no entry gate, and it would mean that it would have certain aspects related to a raised platform, the concept of a shikhar, thereafter the mandapa or the mandapa concept. Now, very simply, the first exception which is important for the exam is what you can see are called Suraj Kunds, or what are called Surya Kunds, or what we call as step wells. Step wells are nothing but a major exception to Nagara style, because only in Dravida style that we have water tanks. Water tanks is a very specific very specific aspect related to the Dravida temples, not Nagara temples. Second is that these temples also have what we call as boundary wall with Torana. Torana means entry gate. So basically, it has all the features. This is called the Solanki school. This is called the Solanki school of Nagara style. And basically, entry gate and the concept of step wells, which is water tank, are two very basic features of Dravida. And both are there as exceptions here, except for that it has all the features which would be there for a concept of Nagara, which is Ardh-mandap, Mardap. The shikhar is not that big, but still it has the concept of shikhar, and it is on a raised platform in that sense. So it is in that sense that only. Now, this is the first thing, which is to understand the concept of Nagara, which is shikhar, mandap, Ardh mandap, the concept of a pitha, which is the base, which is the platform, and no water tank. And I'll write this down for you. Just give me 1 second. Okay. What are the basic features of Nagara? Nagara is shikhara, Ardh mandapa, this is generic Nagara, and pitha, which is raised platform. And there are two basic rules. There is no boundary wall and there is no water tank. However, within the Nagara school, there is the Solanki school, and within Solanki school comes Modhera. And this is technically answering this question also, that the Sun Temple in Modhera is Nagara style with what is called regional specifications. And technically the regional specification is that plus it has boundary wall, plus it has Torana, which is technically the entry gate. And thereafter, it also has another two important features, which is the concept of wells, or what we call as step wells. Elucidate means to demonstrate, to expand on what is written. So, as I said, you have these basic features. Modhera is important. The next set of important facts is, because it becomes important for the prelims also, is it is on the Pushpavati river, but the most important, Bhima I of Chalukya dynasty, 1026-27 means that it is technically purely in early medieval period. Nagara style with exception, as I said, water tank and the concept of Torana, which is an entry gate. And why has this village become 24/7 solar powered? Because 1,000 solar power panels have been installed basically in the village houses, therefore making it self-sufficient on a renewable energy. So in this, it's a very small topic but important for GS paper 1. 3 things you need to remember. Modera is technically Nagara style Solanki school. Second, what are the exception? Water tank Torana. Third, which dynasty? Chalukya. Remember, the Western Chalukyas after a pointer called Solankis. That is why they technically not fall under Vesara. They fall under Solanki Nagara. So the Chalukya dynasty period Bhima 1. Remember Bhima 1? Bhima 1 is the one who made it. So this can be asked in the examination very simply to match the following in that sense. This is clear, everyone? Basic point. Why are we doing this? Yes. Okay. Thereafter, I asked you a question, I gave you the answer also, which is the Sun Temple at Modera is a specimen of Nagara style with its regional specification. Elucidate. As I said, it is a specimen of Nagara style because it has Shikhara, Ardmandap, Mandap, Pitha. Now, I'll tell you one more thing, how to approach this type of question, because in art and culture, students ask me how to approach a question. Very simply, in the introduction, you will write about Bhima 1, making it, and you need to talk about the historical context. Chalukya dynasty made in the 11th century. Now, thereafter you move to the body. You need to talk about what are the Nagara style concept, are the mandap, this, that, and regional specification you will need to talk about. 2 very exceptions, Torana and water tank. And conclude by saying that it has recently been in the news at the current affairs here, recently in the news, becoming the first solar powered concept. Maru Gujra style, no, it's not Maru Gujra style. It's not, there's nothing called Maru Gujra style. It's a very regional school of that. It is Nagara style only, right? Domino. Okay. So with this, firstly, thank you. You've been very patient throughout the 2 hours. So all 5 topics are clear. Before you leave this session, I'll give you a basic summary of all of them and then I'll take questions. First topic was what? We discussed the concept of RTIs and how RTIs are backlogging, problem of vacancy, and secondly, problem related to pendency. No penalties, that is why pendency. Second topic, we understood the concept of the UK crisis and how Russia-Ukraine has created a domino effect, which is a cascading effect, thereby leading to political crises. And it is not a very easy road for Rishi Sunak. But how do we care? He's the British Prime Minister, not the Indian Prime Minister. Let him sort it out. Third, the basic point of the matter was we discussed then anti-superstition law. Basically, anti-superstition law, need for it because numbers are very big and there is no basic approach to lenient law. Fourth, we discussed the concept of the Google issue, which is Google is a software manufacturer, anti-monopolistic behavior, that is becoming an issue. And fifth is Modera. Modera was in the news for a very specific reason, but that gives us an opportunity to understand the static behind it. Right? Tornas, the word comes from the Buddhist architecture only. Perfect. So thank you so much. If you don't have a question, you can leave the session. Thank you. Take care. I will see you maybe very soon, maybe another webinar, maybe in class for sure. And as I said, keep it simple. Mains-based current affairs is more about understanding, not about the nitty-gritties of facts, right? Thank you. Take care. Good night. If not, I'll take the questions which are in front of me. What CCI does with the charge money? It gives it to the government of India, statutory body. 51%, 49 concept is 51% of the revenue is given if you get, for example, from me 100 rupees for advertisement. 51 is given to the newspaper. 49 is kept with Google as an intermediary. Okay. Right. What is the issue with 45 billion pounds? The issue is that is technically a tax break which has now destroyed the economy itself. Well, Naresh, same here. It was good. It was a very long time I've seen you. Some of you have not seen for a very long time. It was good interacting with you. There are different sun temples. There are sun temple. Konark is different. Konark is different. This is Modera. Way forward for Europe. Why do we care for way forward for Europe? But way forward for Europe is technically to find some other form of energy, technically find a solution for the Russia-Ukraine crisis. That is also created by them only. See, that is to tell you a cautionary tale. UK goes down, it destroys itself. How does it matter to us? We should be happy about it. I'm being very blunt here. Okay. If winter is coming, they will die of that. That's the basic point. We Indians have this tendency. We are very proud of Indian origin people. He's technically not going to do anything in Indian interest. What does CCI do with the fined money? It becomes a receipt for the government of India. Liz Truss. She's the one who's gone. Achal, I'm not sure about that. No, Saif, because Google Pixel is made by Google. Foxconn is the manufacturer. That doesn't matter. Who markets it doesn't matter. WTO would not be an equivalent to Competition Commission. That is World Trade Organization. There are competition commissions across the world with different names. That's a separate issue altogether. Remember, 6th November, the prelims test series starts. You need to be a part of it. 6th and 13th, both are technically free tests also. So you can give it, only have to register. Go to the app, you will find it. In art and culture, which conclusion we have to write? In art and culture, always talk about significance or talk about the impact of something. For example, you need to talk about Modera, how Modera has become a 24/7. It's a good analogy that it's the sun temple and a solar powered village in that regard. Full course test. The 6th November is full course test. And 13th November is polity. Okay, perfect. So I will see you soon. Thank you so much. Have a great night. Good night. Take care. And some of you, I will see you on. Thank you, Lalita, for that. I will see you, some of you, on Saturday and Sunday for Modern India. Thereafter, I'm there for Ancient and Medieval from 9th November in evening batch. See you. Take care. Bye-bye.